This is a typical navbar menu, and this is the navbar we will build in this video. Clicking on a link, the icon draws from scratch. To create this effect, we will work with SVGs and their properties. To make the indicator movement dynamic, we will use JavaScript. We will also cover CSS animations, transitions, and positioning. Even though this tutorial is beginner-friendly, you must know the basics of HTML, CSS, and JS. Now let's dive into coding. Opening a VS Code, we have our files created. Within our HTML, we do not have so much, just our project name and the other files attached to HTML. As usual, we start by creating a container, main.container. Within a container, we are going to create one navbar element. Within navbar, we are going to have 5 navbar items. And these navbar items are actually wrappers or containers for our icons. We are gonna paste our icons as an SVG format. I already have them stored here in this file, the link to which will be in the description. We just copy the first one and paste it here. If you didn't know, the SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphic, which is a markup language for creating two-dimensional icons. The SVG tag is a wrapper. This viewbox attribute defines its size. The path tag is actually the main tag for creating the shapes of an SVG. So in our case, we have 3 paths, which creates these 3 lines of this icon. So I'm gonna paste the other icons. Our icon indicators have these defining texts, so let's create them. Span, menu.
The second is going to be privacy. Then settings. Next is folders. And the final one we just name gallery.
That's it. This HTML is actually enough for now. Now let's move to CSS. We open the browser on the right and reset the default settings of the all element and their pseudo elements. Next, we call our container. Our container is a main tag, and that means its width is the width of the viewport. So let's make its height the height of the viewport as well. Its display is grid, and it places its only child, which is the navbar, in the center. Font family, sans serif, and the background color is gonna be kind of a black color. Let's define this variable. Root, we paste what we copied. Next, we call our navbar. The navbar width is going to be 600 pixels. Its height is going to be 120 pixels. We give it a padding, 0 from top and bottom and 3 rems from each sides. We make its box sizing content box, even though by default we define it as a border box up here. We do this because we want these 3 rems to be added on top of 600 pixels instead of being included within it. Then we make its display flex. It aligns its children in the center and justifies them by giving space between them. We give it a border radius of 1 rem and give it a background color as we did for the page itself. Let's define this variable as well. Next, we call our navbar item. As we said, these are the containers for our icons as we see. So we give it a width of 120 pixel, the height of 100%. We make its display flex. Thus we want to align our icons in the center. Justify center. That's it for navbar item. Then we call the icons themselves. We haven't given this class to our SVGs yet, so we come to our HTML. We select the SVG like this, and the VS Code already highlights the other cases of our selection. So to select all of them, just hit Ctrl-Shift-L, right-click, class, and icons. We come to CSS. We know that our icons are SVGs. Let's first remove this background color. We do not need it. So the width of our icons, SVG icons, are gonna be 3.5 rem. The same is gonna be the height of it. We give it a stroke of a white color. The fill is gonna be transparent. And if we zoom in like this, we see some icons corners are really sharp. So we come up here and we write line cap, stroke line cap, and we make it rounded. The other one is line join. We make it rounded as well. Now we're gonna give dash array, stroke dash array, which is gonna be 400, and meter limit, which is gonna be 10. Cursor pointed, we make it hoverable. Now let's design our texts. Navbar items span. We make them of a white color. We make them capitalized, text transformation capitalize, and their position is gonna be absolute, and we move them to the bottom by 10%. As we see, they escaped outside of the navbar. So let's come up here and give a navbar position of a relative. Time to create our indicator. First we come to HTML. Down here inside the navbar, after the navbar items, we create another div with an ID indicator. We come to CSS, we target this indicator, and its width is gonna be 120 pixels. So does its height. The background color is gonna be green. Let's define this variable as well. Next, we're gonna make it rounded. So we give it a border radius of 50%. Its position is gonna be absolute. We make its top 0 and left 3 rems so that it does not escape to this side. Now let's move it up by 50%. So we write transform, translate along the y-axis by 50% negative. As we see, our icon is being overlaid by the indicator. So we give it a z-index of 1. We give our icons the z-index of 2. And we give the navbar a z-index of 0, which is the parent for both. We come back here, and in order to create the gap between the indicator and the navbar, we use the border. We give it 1 rem, we make it solid, and the background color definitely is going to be the background color of the page itself. Now it's time to move our icon inside the indicator to give it a clicked effect. We come to HTML, we give the first SVG a class of active. Coming back to CSS, after icons block, first we call the icons class, right after it we call the active class without any gap. This approach gives us an element with both classes. It's not like giving a gap between them. This approach gives us an element with an active class which is inside another element with icons class. Now we make the stroke of a clicked icon black. Make the stroke width wider to 1.5 pixels and move the clicked icon along the y-axis by negative 105%. That's it. This is the state of a clicked icon. Now we have to do the same for other icons when they are clicked by converting them to this state, making them black and moving them up, and moving the indicator behind them. We come to JS, we get our icons, document, query selector all, icons. As for the icons, they are node lists. If we console them, we see that they're node lists. What is good about node lists? That they have these methods like entries for each item and so on. We need for each. We get the icon and its index. As for the icon, we set it an event listener, which is click, and when it's clicked, we trigger a function like make active, which accepts the icon's index like this. And let's create this function make active, that accepts the clicked icon index as a parameter. And to make the clicked link active, we simply have to remove this active class from other icons and paste it to the one which is clicked like this. First, we have to remove the active class from the icons. So we write icons for each icon. We call the icon its classless attribute, remove the active. Then from the icons one more time, using the index passed to the function, we get the clicked icon, classless, add active. There we go. Now we have to move the indicator behind the clicked icon, and we do that by simply transforming the indicator. In JS, we write const indicator document get an element by ID indicator. Inside the function, we call our indicator style transform translate function that accepts x and y values. The y value is a constant value. It's this negative 50% using which we moved up our indicator. So we just copy it and paste it for the y value. As for the x value, it's a dynamic value. I think you've noticed that the width of the indicator is 120 pixels. And the same is the width of the navbar item, which is a wrapper for our icons. And there's no gap between the navbar items. That means if we want to move the indicator behind the second clicked icon, we have to transform it to the right by 120 pixels, behind the third by 240, behind the fourth by 360, and behind the last by 480. And I think you have probably guessed that these values are the result of multiplying 120 pixels by the indexes of these icons. So that's what we write here. 120 multiplied by the index of the clicked icon with a pixel unit. The indicator is transforming rapidly. Let's make its transformation smooth by applying some transitions and animations. We come to CSS. First we go to our variables. I'm gonna paste two timing functions, which I named isOut and isIn. CSS has its own isIn and isOut timing functions, but I usually do not use them. We come down to our indicator. We give it a transition, which is gonna be on transform, and it happens within 0.3 seconds. As for the timing function, we are gonna give isOut isIn function. Now our indicator has this cool transformation effect. Let's do the same for the icons. We come up to .icons.active block, which defines the state of the clicked icon, and we give it an animation. The first animation we name stroke. It happens within half second. The timing function is gonna be isOut, and we give it 0.3 seconds delay. This delay time is actually the time for the indicator transition. That means we want the animation to take place for the clicked icon as soon as the indicator gets behind it. The final property we give is animation direction, which is going to be reverse. Let's define the keyframes. We name it stroke, and we give it 100% state right away. The property is going to be stroke-offset. The value is going to be 400. This reverse actually takes the SVG icon from this state and converts it to this state. So let's see the effect. We see that the clicked icon is being drawn from scratch, which actually happens after 0.3 seconds, during which the icon is just there, which is actually a drawback. And that's the reason why we give this second animation. We call it fade, and we just copy the other properties from the first animation except the last one, and we paste it for the second animation. The second one is gonna have an animation mode forwards. The only difference, we could not combine these two animations, is the first one animation direction, which is reverse, and the second one animation mode, which is forward. Let's create the keyframes for the second animation. We change the name to fade. The property is going to be opacity, which we set to 1, and that means we have, by default, we have to set the opacity to 0. There we go. Now we get this cool effect for our clicked icon. Let's do something with the texts. By default, we want them to be invisible, but we're not gonna set their display to none, or their visibility to hidden, or their opacity to 0. The approach we take is using their pseudo elements before. Using their pseudo elements, we want to cover them. So we write content. The content is going to be empty. The width is going to be 100%. The same is going to be the height. The background color is going to be white for a while. And we make its position absolute to make them appear like this. Now if we change the background color to the background color of the navbar, they disappear. If we zoom out and zoom in like this, we notice the dots. We can fix this problem by setting the overflow for the text to hidden. There we go. The reason we took this approach is that we want the clicked icon text to be revealed from the left to the right. So we call the clicked icon, and we call it span pseudo element, and we're gonna give it an animation which we call reveal. It's gonna happen within half second. For the timing function, we're gonna give is in, and its animation mode is gonna be forwards. Let's create the keyframes. Reveal 100% state right away, and we're gonna transform it along the x-axis by 100%, like this. There we go. The text is for the clicked icon is too low. I want to just move it up a little bit. So I'm gonna copy this one. But this time I just want to trigger the span itself, not its pseudo element. And we give it bottom of 20%. By default, it's 10%. There we go. We see that our navbar does not contain any sharp edges or corners except these two. So let's make them rounded as well. There are actually different approaches, but we are going to use SVG icons in the form of corners. We come to HTML. Inside the indicator div, I'm going to paste two SVGs, one for the right, the other for the left. I give them a total class, corner, and the first one I'm gonna give left class, which is unique for it. The second right. We count to CSS after indicator block. First we give their total properties by calling the class they both share, corner. The width is gonna be 40 pixels. The height is gonna be the same. Their position is gonna be absolute. And we move them down by 50%. Let's give them fill of white for now to see. There we go. Then we call the left one. We actually transform it, rotate it around the y-axis by 180 degrees. And then move it to the left by minus 52%. We're gonna do the same for the right, but without rotating it. There we go. Now let's change their background color to the background color of the page. Nice. And finally, we are done. Now you owe me one subscription. Just kidding. Please support the channel and take care. Peace.